Hello everyone, this is Pico Entertainment and we are back again, and here now we have a review of the premiere episode of Supergirl's 6th and final season. The episode was titled Rebirth. Now there will probably be spoilers in this review, so just to warn you now, just in case you haven't yet caught up with the remaining parts of the 5th season and also its finale, you can also check out my review of the 5th season and the finale episode within this channel, and I will leave the link within the description. So just to quickly recap on what happened at the end of the 5th season, we had Supergirl and the team essentially defeating the Leviathan plans to control the population using the Obsidian virtual technology. Lex was working with Leviathan, having defeated Brainiac in a battle and gaining some sort of major superpower. And of course, Kara and Lena had finally reconciled and worked out these differences, which I was very happy about because I didn't like the Dark Lena arc that we saw in season 5. Quickly, just to bear in mind that as with all of the CW shows within last year, they were all affected by the COVID outbreak, with the remaining episodes of the previous seasons cut short. So normally the episodes are around 22 episodes, and they had to cut off the last 2 or 3 episodes. So we always have to bear that in mind, that really what we were seeing here in this opening episode, rather than the opening of season 6, we were really seeing the finale of season 5, and they had to retrofit the early part of this season. And to be honest, you could really feel that throughout this episode. It was one of those instances where if this had followed on from the penultimate episode of last season, then I think it would have felt a bit more cohesive. But going into it straight away as the season opener, it was a bit disjointed at times. It wasn't as cohesive. You know, we had a lot of action set pieces and a lot of explanation and exposition, and of course if you were going into this season fresh, you were kind of a bit lost. We had an action-packed opening where we saw the Team Supergirl come into the Leviathan fortress, taking down the female cyborg who was the main boss lady, I think, of Leviathan, if you remember from the previous episode. So it was all very spectacular, but it was all too quick, rather. You know, the action never really stuck with you because everything was just rattling on at such a quick pace. Kind of just felt that we were wrapping things up rather quickly, and I think in the natural order of events, I think this would have been far more prolonged. We would have had at least a couple of episodes to really distinguish and set up this conflict far longer to make it far more impactful. But it was just rushed over very quickly, and as I mentioned before, we were explaining what was going on with Lex. We saw the early scenes where he went into the energy transfer machine set by Leviathan, and he came out transmitting all of these superpowers. We saw as well him exhibiting the Kryptonian power ring along with Lillian accompanying him, of course. Everything was just going on at such a quick pace. And essentially the main plot of the story was how they team up to stop Lex, who, now that he was emboldened by having these superpowers, he was very much determined to go ahead and destroy Supergirl. And as I said, overall the pacing wasn't really put together very well. I think they just seemingly wanted to get through this episode as quickly as possible before going ahead with the real story set out for the 6th and final season. I think it was very similar to The Flash when that very well started, when it was concluding its mirror universe arc. It was kind of, well, we're starting the overall season, but we have to conclude this as quickly as possible so we can set the ground running for the final story that we're going to tell. So that's why I gave this episode a bit more of an allowance when I was watching it. I mean, I still liked all of the characters involved, and really, to be honest, I think the better part of this episode was the quieter scenes where we had multiple back and forth between Kara and Lena, of course, reconciling their differences, Alex and John, we had Brainy and Dreamer, and all of these scenes worked quite well, and I think it shows again how well the actors are playing these characters. There still remains a good chemistry, I think, between all of the actors involved, and you'd expect that having played these characters for overall 5 seasons. But the action ramps up where we see Lex meeting up with Kara in the fortress, and he double crosses her when using the Kryptonian power ring. And in between that, I think we had probably the best visuals of the episode, where we saw both John and Megan going up in space. They had to counteract all of the satellites, and I like this sequence. I like the visuals where we see them both in their Martian forms surrounding the planets with the red beam as they go ahead to disarm all the satellites. So I like that visual, that was very nice. And then we go back again to the Lex battle with Kara. He seemingly kills her with kryptonite, but then we see, I think what was probably the contingency plan set by Lena. They obviously expected Lex to double cross Supergirl, so we saw the Lena Luthor protocol engaging, and a small drone comes in and puts Kara in a protective suit that we've seen through multiple seasons throughout, protecting her from the Kryptonian effects. And then we probably get to what I think was probably the worst part of this episode, where we get, for some reason, a strange playing of the We Are the Champions song by Queen, where we see Lex with his big shotgun celebrating the fact that he feels that he's killed Kara. Again, we always know that Lex is very much of an extroverted character, and Jon Cryer has very much of a playful interpretation with Lex. Sometimes when the balance is off, it comes across as a bit cheesy and comical, but I think for the most part throughout these previous seasons, he's managed to walk that line very well. But I think this scene here was just out of place. There was no need for it. It really kind of sucked any air of tension out of the predicament that we'd seen on here. There was no need for it, and you're kind of sitting thinking, like, what are they doing within this scene? So I didn't really like this scene, but we stopped quickly for another big battle with the heroes fighting against Lex, and we had some pretty decent visuals here as everybody's using their energy beams. We see Lex in the air fighting back with them, and we get a tense moment where we see that he's seemingly going to use the phantom projector on Alex. It seems they have a massive confrontation, and also what I noticed is everybody is using so many gadgets, whether it's to transport to one place or another, whether it's the phantom projector or something else to help disarm the satellites. Everybody seemed to be armed with all of these modern day portable gadgets. There's something else I noticed throughout this episode, but Lex fires the phantom projector and it goes to Kara, and she seemingly disintegrates into the Phantom Zone. Alex is obviously very enraged. They manage to take away the powers from Lex. Lena punches him, and then he threatens to reveal Kara's identity, but then both Jon and Megan apprehend him. And I think the next couple of scenes were really kind of resetting back to the original status quo of what Supergirl used to be before the crisis. So essentially now it's revealed that Lex was behind all of the evil plans. Everybody sees it on the news. So obviously now he won't no longer be seen as this very famous humanitarian that he was post the crisis events. We get the very subplot now where we saw Andrea seemingly going bankrupt in terms of the Obsidian company. I wasn't really too interested in this passage of events, but again, we were more wrapping up her own story arc throughout this previous season, and then we see the fact that she's calling the company Catco again, and then go back to being much more of a news and journalistic company. So once again, we're just going back to the original roots of what we've seen throughout the Supergirl story. So I didn't mind that. Like I said at the beginning of this episode, this is very much more of a finale to season 5, and we're just resetting back to the way things were, which I think is the best thing for the show. And then we get another revelation where we see Lena breaking into the prison, or teleporting into the prison cell, where we see Lillian and Lex talking, and she uses the Myriad device to mind wipe their memories so they no longer know that Kara is Supergirl. So again, just resetting and going back to the way things were. I don't mind it as such. I hope now that we can move forward and focus on another main antagonist for the season, and I expect Lex will come back in some capacity, but I think for now, if we can just leave Lex behind and focus really back on the original team, and hopefully we can put Lena back in the spotlight, because I think one of the negative effects of focusing so much on Lex is that it takes away a lot of the status of Lena, and I think after the Dark Lena arc, we need to go back to showcase Lena in that more protagonist role alongside the team of Supergirl. So I was very happy about that as well. And then we get a final very good conversation between Jon and Alex. He talks about they knew someone on the Martian planet and they deemed her a sentinel, so they're giving that identity to Alex now. And we see Jon tapping away at the various symbols of the various heroes. So we saw the Batwoman symbol along with the Flash symbol as well, asserting more what Alex's role is going to be throughout this entire season. And then we get the final revelation where we see Kara is trapped in the Phantom Zone, surrounded by all of these monsters coming about her. So that leaves a very interesting note to see what will happen. I don't expect Kara to be trapped in this Phantom Zone for very long. 1 episode, maybe 2 episodes max, and then she'll come back to normal, and then we can really kick on and go ahead for what will happen within this 6th and final season. So overall, in terms of this review, I think it was a bit of a unbalanced, maybe slightly incohesive episode, but as I said, I allowed for this because we really were watching the season 5 finale episode as opposed to the season 6 episode. So I think if things were all normal, I think this would have been a far more spectacular and far more cohesive episode. And I think season 6, obviously, we would have got a different opening. So that's why I'm not overall too harsh on this episode overall. It wrapped things up nicely, concluded all of the dangling arcs that we got in terms of Leviathan, in Andrea, in Lex. So hopefully now we can push on, and I think within the next 2 to 3 episodes, that's where the real story of this 6th season will begin. And as I mentioned in my trailer review of this 6th season, hopefully it can deliver a spectacular and epic conclusion to the series that I think it's deserved of. Like I mentioned before, it's had a good run getting to 6 seasons of Supergirl. I certainly didn't think it would get this far when the show began on CBS, so I think it's a good effort, and I like all the characters, I like all the actors involved as well. So I'm pretty sure now that we've wrapped up the season 5 story, we can kick on with 6th season, and I think we will probably get a strong conclusion to this overall series. So those are my thoughts and feelings on the premiere episode of Supergirl season 6. Let me know what you think in the comments below. How did you think it compared to the previous episodes of season 5? Are you, like me, glad now that we've kind of wrapped up all of the dangling arcs from the previous season, and now we can press on with what we will see going ahead for this 6th and final season? How do you think this compares to the opening episodes of The Flash, Black Lightning and Batwoman as well? So those are my thoughts. Please hit those like and subscription and notification buttons so I can continue to provide you with more content in the future. As of all of the television shows that I will review, if there are any particular standout episodes throughout this season, I will review them, and of course I'll provide a season finale review and also a season review overall of the show. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, stay at safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.